It's no secret that if you're going to be successful in real estate investing, you have to be able to fund your deals. Whether you're doing the Burr method or whether you're fixing and flipping properties for a profit, you got to be able to get to the closing table with money, and you got to have money to rehab the property. And so I personally use Backflip Capital when I need money to get to the closing table and to rehab my properties. I'm in the middle of a flip right now, and I partner with Backflip. It has been the smoothest process of all time. I literally went on their app, applied for the loan. You get pre-approved in less than 48 hours. You can lock in funding in just a few seconds with the touch of a button. Funding takes less than 2 weeks. Hello, that gives you an advantage when you're making offers on properties. And I can't say enough about partnering with Backflip Capital. They're great folks with a fantastic product that everybody listening to this should check out for the next time you go to do a Burr deal or fix and flip property. So here's what I want you to do. Go down to the show notes of this show. I've put a link for Backflip Capital in those notes. All you have to do is click the link so that you can download their app and get your next deal funded with Backflip. All right, so I'm here with my friend Tess Waresmith. What's up, Tess?
Hi, how are you? I'm so excited to be here.
I know, I'm stoked. I met Tess in Orlando at FinCon in like September of last year, 2022.
Yes, last year. And I am super grateful to be recording this podcast with you. I follow all your content. It's so good. And I've learned so much because I am a stock market investor first, real estate investor second, I would say. So I learned so much from you. So thank you so much for having me.
Well, same to you. She crushes it on social media as well. Don't let her fool you. Her name on Instagram is Wealth with Tess. I said that right, correct?
Yeah, that's it.
That's what I thought. I want to give you a good plug here. Great content. We actually did some scheming when we were with each other in Orlando. I'm like, okay, how do we grow and get better? One thing I remember about that conference, it was so embarrassing, is I had to walk around this resort with a cowboy hat on because somebody was like, because the first day I showed up with just a hat and somebody's like, bro, are you the finance cowboy? I was like, yeah. He's like, he or she, they were like, bro, you got to wear your hat. I was like, I don't know if I can walk through Orlando resort with a cowboy hat on. And so then I spent the next 2 days with a hat on and I was just mortified. Like I look back, what was I doing?
No way. I think it's amazing, hey, because everybody will know who you are. You have something that makes you an individual, recognizable. I think it's great. If I had a cowboy hat, I'd wear that thing the whole weekend.
All right, I'm going to ship you one. And next conference, you're going to have to wear one too, you know?
Deal.
Oh, gosh. I don't mind it on camera. I can get away. I'm in my little office over here. Nobody really sees me. But then in person, I'm just like, I mean, at the house I wear them, but like, in a hotel? I don't know. Whatever. You made it.
I think you got to own it. I personally think it's great. I love it.
Well, I appreciate it. I'm sure my buddies and family have a great time giving me a hard time about it, but it's all good. Well, tell everybody a little bit about yourself. Who are you? And, what's your background? Where are you at today? I know this is going to be a great episode. I'm excited for everybody listening in.
Sure. So I today do a lot of different things. I, like you, still have a day job. I'm the VP of operations at a marketing agency. So I oversee all kinds of process creation, project management, strategic merger and acquisition support. And that's been great because it's helped me learn so much about making other things in my life efficient, like managing real estate properties. I own a couple of those. And I also have an online business focused on financial education and helping people go from total beginners, not feeling like they're capable of investing or ready to invest, to investing in the stock market with confidence. And one thing I spend a lot of time on in all of these arenas is focusing on empowering people. I do it at work with empowering my team. I have an amazing team of leaders that I coach, and the clients that I work with. One theme throughout all these things that I focus on is how much our limiting beliefs can hold us back and how we are so much more capable of things. And you've probably done a lot of hard things in your life. And I think when it comes to real estate and stock market investing, people look at it as this really hard thing that only super special people can do. And you have to have a specific background. And it truly is accessible to anyone these days. And one thing that you and I were just talking about quickly before the show was just the amount of education that is available to you that is affordable and fast. Like you can start investing in real estate and the stock market quickly with some intentional effort, even if you have a family, even if you have a busy day job. It is very possible for almost anybody. So that's what I focus on a lot, and that's what I try to create content around, is helping people realize that they are capable of these things and they aren't as hard as everyone feels like they are. But you do have to get an education, and that's where you need to start.
Spot on. I think we get caught up. I remember I did before I bought my first property, and like, oh, I don't know if I'm allowed to do this. Like, do I know how? Can I do this? But if you look back over history, it's like, I mean, millions of people have bought real estate, and then billions probably of people have invested just in general between the stock market and real estate. And at one point, they felt like you do. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know if I'm supposed to be doing this, but they took that step. And so that's the real difference between the people who, build wealth and success through investing and those who don't. It's not capabilities. Maybe with some people, I mean, you got the 1%ers, right? But for most of us normal people, it's just actually doing it, taking the time to learn it and then take that step. And we all can. We all can.
Yes.
I graduated with a 2.6 GPA from college with a communications degree, went solely to play baseball. Like, come on.
Yeah, totally. I mean, my first investment was done with very little education. I was very young. And the reason why I was able to invest in real estate is because I graduated into a recession and I couldn't find a job. And so this was 2010. And I wanted to go work in marketing or finance. I got rejected from literally every single job I applied for. And so I ended up working on cruise ships as an aerial acrobat. That was like my first job. And
we'll dig into that.
And it was, I felt like it was such an absurd job, but it was unique in that I didn't have to pay for rent. Drinks at the bar were like $1. I was smoking back then. Cigarettes were like $2. I don't smoke anymore, thank goodness. So like I was saving so much money. I was working a $40,000, $50,000 a year job, but I was saving so much money because everything was cheap and paid for. So it just took one person to put an idea in my head that I could use this to make more money. And then, like many people, read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and it sort of like opened my brain to all these possibilities. And that was the thing. It was those two things. It was getting rejected from a bunch of jobs and reading that book that then got me to invest in my first property. And I did everything wrong. Like I couldn't have told you any real estate investment ratio. I knew nothing. All I knew was that I wanted to go somewhere where property values were lower after, the 2008 crash, and try to see if I could get something to cash flow. Like that's all I knew. And so since much later, I took, real estate courses and I learned a lot, and I was like, wow, this is really helpful. I wish I had done that before, but I did it. And,
fire though,
Yeah. And it worked out. Hey, like I at least did enough research to understand the basics. And I knew that if everything went toe up, I would be fine and I would be able to I did all the contingency planning if this investment went totally sideways. And it was a single family in Tampa 10 years ago, which if you know anything about the Tampa market has done very, very well. So for a long time, I didn't do very well. I wasn't cash flowing. I was putting all the money back into the property. But that first property, which was not successful for the first few years I bought it, taught me so much. And so since then, I've been able to make much smarter investment decisions. And that one decision changed my entire life because it gave me the capital to invest in other things. It taught me how to overcome mistakes, what's important to learn before you do things. Like this one step, and to some degree was a failure for several years until I got the house under control and a new roof and new plumbing and new literally everything.
Oh, yeah. One of those, huh? One of those.
Yeah. But like I learned so much from that, and it couldn't have, the smartest thing I ever did was just trying. And I think the good thing about that property was it was in a market, and you talk about this a lot. I think this is really important. Like I live in Massachusetts. really expensive to invest in real estate in Massachusetts. So I'm really glad that I opened my horizons to other places to invest, because it would have been really hard for me to start in that market. So yeah, that one decision totally changed my life and opened up all this possibility for me to invest in other things.
That is amazing. What made you pick Tampa? Like that first deal? How did you like stumble? You live in Massachusetts.
Yeah, so I had actually moved to Utah at that time, and I was straight up Googling like markets that were the most affected by the subprime mortgage crisis. And so Phoenix was on that list.
Old people. Where do old people live?
Yeah, pretty much. And I was literally just looking at, I had a very basic calculator. It's not as good as, there's so many good calculators out there now. Mine was not good. And that's because I didn't know everything about real estate investing back then. But I knew enough to be like, okay, if it's vacant this much, if the mortgage is this much, if I have to put this much into capital expenditures and assume this, it should be all right. And so when I looked at Tampa, there was a lot of opportunity there. And so I literally flew there, bought a single family house like that weekend, and then flew back home. And thank goodness I got lucky, and an angel of a property manager fell into my lap, and she was great. I will say that's the most important lesson I learned is find yourself a good property manager.
100%.
But yeah, so I literally just picked it. I did some Googling and I found a market. Nowadays, you can go on Bigger Pockets and talk to 1 million people investing in different markets and get beta. There's so many resources to find great markets now. But back then, it was just a weird Google search.
That's cool though. I mean, you don't have to get super sophisticated, I mean, to this day, you can probably do a Google search, and then you talking about the calculator. It's like, yeah, it's nice to have a sophisticated calculator, but if you just know, okay, you can plug in rents minus all these expenses. Here's what the returns are going to be. I mean, you can get a deal done that way, So when you jumped into that Tampa property, did you know that you were going to have to fix the roof, that you're going to have to do plumbing, all that good stuff? Or were you like so naive, like, oh, I'll just buy it. And it came up and you're like, oh shoot, this costs money.
No, I had no idea. In fact, I didn't get an inspection. And by the way, I have bought property without an inspection since then, but like with a GC friend coming with me to check it out. Like, I've wanted to use that as leverage to get a property, and I've done that a few times since then. But with that property, no, I did not get an inspection. I had no idea that any of that stuff was in such horrible disarray. And then instead of like fixing it all at once, the roof, like I patched some things for a while. I didn't even know how long a roof should last. And then I like patched it up for a while, and then at some point realized that I should have just replaced the whole thing in the first place. Another great lesson learned, right? Like, stop duct taping. Like if you have a problem, it's worth it to just fix it, because you will spend a lot more money duct taping. And so that, again, like lesson learned in future properties, I've been much smarter about how I make repairs and how I manage them. So, honestly, it was not a great first go of it for a few years, but I wouldn't change a thing, because it allowed me to build wealth in ways that I couldn't have even imagined. So I did that without any like formal education. So if anyone takes a course like yours or a program like yours, they're going to be so successful as long as they just follow the steps. Hey.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It's definitely nice to have somebody in your corner, but the fact that you shown that you can do it, but just by trying, just let me go in and give it a shot. That's awesome. And it proves the point that if you buy good real estate and you hold on to it, you're going to win. Now, short term, it may suck, you're going to run into some pain points sometimes. And, I would always advise on getting an inspection done, especially if it's your first property. But, you can't take it back now. But even you like skipping all that and running into the headaches you did, it's like you look back 10 years from now and you're like, heck yeah, I'm glad I bought that property.
Totally. It changed everything for me. And it also allowed me to start investing in the stock market. And then I had enough money to invest in other properties. And what I learned is that it doesn't have to be that hard, and it doesn't have to take that much time. And stock market investing is exactly the same way. People feel like it's so out of reach because there's so much financial jargon and you have to have some economics degree or whatever, and you just don't. And you just need a little bit of an education. And the only thing that's holding most people back is their mindset. And a lot of that has to do with, how you grew up and your relationship with money. Like that's why if you feel like you can't invest in real estate or the stock market, it likely has to do with your money mindset and understanding like what your relationship with money is. Why do you believe that you can't do this thing, or you can't make money, or you don't deserve to have money, or whatever it is? I really think it all starts there. Once you figure that out, the rest of this stuff is all just different ways to play the game of wealth accumulation, right? And so I like to play the game in different ways. I have a job, I have real estate, I invest in businesses, I've done hard money lending, I've done all kinds of stuff. And I'm comfortable doing all those things. And I'm actually pretty conservative with how I manage all of these things. I'm not a very risky investor, I would say, but I have enough belief in myself that there's so many different ways to make money, and then you can really receive the education, but you have to get your mind right first.
I think that's important. You got to get the mindset. If you don't have the mindset, you're done. Because you'll never take action. Or you make take action, and one bad thing happens, and you're screwed because you just give up. I always say, and this would go for any type of investing, but I always say it with real estate. I say it's riskier for my future to not invest in real estate than it is to invest in real estate. You know what I'm saying? And
1,000%.
So you're screwing your future self by not investing. Whatever's holding you back right now. Now you need to get your finances in order, make sure you build a strong foundation, get out of bad debt, get your emergency fund in place, but then you have no excuse not to. You're literally robbing from your future self, from your future spouse, from your future kids, from your future grandkids, just because your mind's not right. And so I would encourage anybody who's stuck in that point, take that next step. Let's change that today. You can change it right now. You don't have to keep going. And you will be so glad that you did. So let me ask you this. Why stocks combine with real estate, and how do you allocate where you're sending your money?
That is a great question. So I have always wanted to diversify as much as possible. So I'm a firm believer that it's just impossible to know what's going to happen in the future with the housing market, with the stock market. I think the housing market is a little bit more predictable from a supply and demand standpoint. So I think in terms of like building wealth quickly, real estate is, in my opinion, one of the best ways to go. However, for a lot of people, that feels really inaccessible. And for me, sometimes, I've had big years, a few years ago, my father passed away, and I was super just overwhelmed, and I could barely do my day job and manage my properties. And that wasn't a good time for me to be investing in real estate, but I want to make sure I'm still building wealth. So that was a year when I was just like, I'm going to make it easy on myself, invest in index funds, which those of you that don't know what an index fund is, it's just a fund that holds a lot of different stocks at once rather than stock picking. So it makes it really easy. You can get the average return of the stock market, which is historically about 8% after inflation. And it's a really easy way to invest. If that sounds complicated to you because you've never done it, it's actually like couldn't be easier. And that's what I teach people to do.
Which ones do you give which ones you recommend on here?
Index funds?
Yeah, for anybody curious.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So it depends on your goals, but I would say if you're brand new and overwhelmed and you don't know where to start, there are what are called target date index funds, and those funds have really low fees. Every single fund you invest in has something called an expense ratio, and that's the annual percentage fee that you'll have to pay to own that investment. So what's great about index funds, if you're not familiar, is that oftentimes they're invested in a ton of different stocks all at once. They're super low fee, and it's a great investment to just buy and hold for a long time. So if you're just starting out, there are ways that you can buy so many at once that you only need to hold like one or two. So for example, there's a fund called a target date index fund. And what that does is it holds stocks and bonds, and it will actually change the composition of the fund over time as you get closer to retirement to make it less risky. So theoretically, you could open a retirement account or a brokerage account at a brokerage like Fidelity or Vanguard or Charles Schwab, and you could set up a automated investment every single month into a target date index fund. And then you can select, usually they have like a date on the fund itself. So the date that you think you're going to retire or your goal to retire, you can choose that fund and then you could leave that alone. And that would be stock market investing. You'd probably do better than the average person trying to pick stocks. It would be a great way to grow your wealth over time. It wouldn't be like explosive growth, but you would still very likely be outpacing inflation, and the historical returns of the stock market are roughly 10%. So that is a great option if you're just starting. Other options include there's a total world stock market, which holds every single stock in the entire world in one fund. And you can buy, if you buy the index version of that or the ETF version of that, it's super low fee. So instead of trying to pick stocks, you're holding about 4,000 different stocks. So for somebody, if they want to invest and they have no idea where to start, there's a lot of index funds that hold an incredible amount of stocks or stocks and bonds that can make it really easy for you. And you don't have to adjust your investments all the time. So I think because there are so many myths around investing that it's really complicated, that people aren't always aware of index funds as an option. And I think it's really important that people understand that that's an option, and you don't necessarily need a financial advisor to buy these for you. That's one thing that is really important to me too. And actually, my story of why I started my business was because I had a certified financial advisor that I figured out wasn't acting in my best interest. And one of the big things I found was that the funds I was invested in had huge fees. I was paying the financial advisor on top of it. She sold me a totally garbage annuity that was better suited for somebody in their 60s, not like 20. I think I was 26 at the time. Terrible investment on my behalf. So when I left, I invested her. I broke up with my financial advisor. It's like the best feeling in the world, just being empowered to like own my own money and have total control over my money. I invested in a couple index funds and I looked at the returns. Like I nerded out hard. I looked at what she had created for me over the last 5 or 6 years that I had worked for her. And if I had invested those in simple index funds, and it would have beat whatever crazy portfolio, like she had me in like 30 funds. Like that's not normal.
They're trying to make commission. Like for y'all who are like, why would they do that? Because they get paid more commission.
Exactly.
In certain funds. And unfortunately, I'm sure there are good ones out there.
When I set out on my real estate journey 5 years ago, I wasn't exactly sure what the outcome was going to be, but I knew based on history that people who had bought this asset and held it over time, it had completely changed their lives. It had given them life-changing wealth. It had given them time freedom, and it had given them financial freedom. And I knew that I wanted that for myself and my family. Fast forward from 2018 to today, and it has completely changed our lives. It has completely changed my family tree because I said yes. I took that step forward into buying this asset that has proven itself time and time again for centuries. And so if you're still on the sidelines and you have yet to start buying real estate, or maybe you have a few properties, but you've ran into roadblocks and you haven't been able to scale and add the volume you needed to have that huge impact on your life, then I want to invite you into our Rental Academy community, where you're going to be linked up with investors all across the country. You're going to have coaching multiple times a week from myself and our entire panel of world-class coaches. You're going to be given all the knowledge and know-how that you need to be successful in real estate, the calculators, the templates, the guides, the lending partners, the insurance partners, the LLC partners, all of it. We're going to teach you everything you need to know to be successful in real estate investing. And then we're going to be there with you along the journey, hold your hand and guide you so that you can have the opportunity to reach and achieve financial freedom like I and so many of our students and people across the country have. So when you're ready to say yes, text the word WIN, W-I-N, to 871-861-9264. Set up a time to chat with myself or somebody on our team so that we can go on this journey with you and help you achieve the life of your dreams.
There are amazing ones out there. Yeah, there are amazing ones. And I will say that if you're looking for a good one type of financial advisor I really like is a fee-only financial advisor where they will charge you like a flat fee and help you come up with a full financial plan. Like that can be really worthwhile. But if you're working with a financial advisor that's charging you a percentage of your money, you just need to be like really aware of what they're doing and make sure that it makes sense. So
sorry to cut you off, but if you don't have a lot of wealth, let's say you're just getting started, is there really any benefit of a financial advisor at all? What are they? Because from everything I've read, index funds outpace their returns oftentimes. And so it's like they're not helping you preserve your wealth right now because you don't have any wealth. So it's like all they're going to do is charge you fees, get you the same or worse returns, and probably try to push an insurance product on you.
Yeah.
That's what I've learned.
Yeah. I think unless you think you will never, and this is where I would challenge your limiting beliefs. If you're someone sitting there like, oh, I couldn't do that, like I'm not smart enough or I'm not capable or I don't have the education to do that, like stop right there because that's a limiting belief. But if you feel like you have a very complex situation, like to your point, like a lot of money, or you're really near retirement, that's when a financial advisor could make sense. But for the vast majority of people, you don't need somebody to help you choose some simple investments in the stock market. And that's what makes index funds so great is that even if you're a total newbie and you know nothing, I could teach you in 10 minutes how to invest your money and you'd be doing just as good or better than most actively managed portfolios will do. So I don't think there's a huge benefit. There is some benefit, I suppose, if they're really engaging with you and helping you with all of your financial planning in terms of like your budgeting. If you have like a hard time budgeting, but then I would get a budget coach, honestly, if that's what you need. I would get somebody to help you manage your finances, like a coach that can teach you how to do it long term so you're not paying someone over and over again to make sure that you have your money sorted.
Yeah. No, I think that's smart. I've always struggled with the market personally. So, transparency here, I have some liquidity in the market, or I have money in the market. And the reason I have money in the market is for some liquidity. I have 401k, which isn't liquid. That's totally separate, that I get a match from my company. So I've just always put the match in. And then I've always kept a little bit in index funds, and I got a couple single stocks, which one of them is through my company, so I get a discount, but the majority of mine are in index funds. And, as a real estate investor, I'll be honest, it's very hard to keep them in there because I see so many deals and I may need capital for a deal. I can't get lending from somebody else for whatever reason. And I'm like, and I go pull from it. But a beautiful thing being a real estate investor and having that liquidity is I can go pull from it, and it's sitting in the market, working for me compared to just, I have an emergency fund that's outside of that. So the way my finances are set up, in case anybody's wondered, I have no debt whatsoever, no consumer debt whatsoever. So I don't owe anybody a dime outside of real estate. And so that's it, real estate. And so then I have an emergency fund. I keep probably, 3 months. There's 3 months of an emergency fund that sits in a savings account. And then everything else that I have, every other dime that I get goes to us living, right? And then real estate. And then I have a portion that just goes into index funds every month. And that's the beautiful thing about personal finance. You were talking about getting a budget coach. If you can clean your finances up and get in a good position to where, okay, I'm not drowning in debt anymore. Now you can kind of play around with where your money's allocated. You can start dabbling in real estate. You can, throw it into some liquid funds that maybe you leave there and you let them grow forever. Or maybe you pull them out sometime to do real estate deals. But it really starts, and I think this is something you help people with, in addition to investing. If not, we can get them sent to the right person. Really starts with like building that foundation, and I know we've talked about this before. You can't, if you try to invest on top of a sloppy personal financial foundation, you're going to get smoked at some point. But if you take the time and build that strong foundation with the right principles, getting rid of bad debt, building an emergency fund, bro, who cares what happens? I mean, not who cares. Obviously you care, but the whole house ain't you're not playing with a house of cards.
Yes, 100%. And that's something that so I have an online program that teaches people the basics of investing in index funds and how to use retirement accounts to reduce your taxes. And one thing that people don't really get until they get into my program is how much time we spend on one, getting your mindset right. Like, how do you feel when you're exchanging money? Are you buying things that you don't really need because they're making you feel better? Is there a way that we can increase your personal margin, which is the difference between how much you earn and how much you spend? And then once you start to figure out how you can make sure that you have a margin, you can decide what to do with that in all kinds of ways. So like you, I have a taxable brokerage account that's flexible. That's like my real estate brokerage account, so that if I see a property that I want, because I think I'll always be a casual real estate investor. Every few years, I would like to get a property. It's not something I'm going to do every year because I like to do other stuff, but I do think it's one of the best, if not the best way to build wealth. So I will always have something set aside for that. But the reason I can do that is because I have the foundation set and I understand about what my cash flow looks like, how much money is coming in every month, how much money is going out every month, how much I can invest automatically into a taxable brokerage or a retirement fund. And then I have all the flexibility in the world to do different things. And just because you decide to invest in the stock market first to start doesn't mean that you can't do real estate later. And in fact, that was one way that I was able to continue to buy properties, is because I had my sort of shit show Tampa property that ended up turning around. But then I was also at the same time investing in index funds that had done really well. And then I was able to pull money from both of those accounts to invest in my next property, which ended up being a multifamily.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, there's so many ways to skin a cat. There's so many ways to get wealthy. I think some keys, again, are making sure your finances are taken care of, generate income, because income is going to be that fuel that really propels how it's going to decide how fast your wealth is going to grow, right? You want your wealth to grow faster, you got to have access to more money. And then once that's done, it's okay, how do we allocate where this stuff's going? For me, 80 to 85% is going to real estate. It may not be everybody's cup of tea. I could put together a great argument of why it should be. It has the opportunity to grow wealth faster than anything else and generate cash flow. But I think there's a time and a place for all types of, not all types of investing, but liquidity mixed with assets like real estate. So I think that's really cool. So what was it like? You bought the first property in 2013, and then you have transitioned into some multifamily. What made you make that transition? How those deals unfold for you?
So those deals went really, really well. I live in Massachusetts, and there is a tier 2 city called Worcester, which is very central to Massachusetts. It's about an hour outside Boston. And so that is a market that has been up and coming for like 40 years. And I think a lot of people weren't super interested in it for a long time. And then with COVID, it just blew up in a lot of ways. So I got in a little bit before COVID and was super lucky to have found a property then. But Worcester is an interesting market, and I think it would be an amazing case study for any sort of larger city outside a larger city, right? Like everyone's priced out of Boston. It's so expensive. Even if you're making decent money, no one can afford to live there. And so when I looked at what was happening, I grew up thinking Worcester was a total garbage city. And I would never have thought I would ever invest there. And then when I ended up like looking back into it, they're building a high-speed train from Worcester to Boston. They're pouring money to the city to make it nicer. They're cleaning up a lot of stuff. There were a lot of really good directional things that the city was doing. And so it just felt like the right time. So I ended up I house hacked one, and then I bought a second one. And both of those were pretty casual. I didn't do a ton of cold outreach, but I did network a lot. And I had somebody call me with an off-market deal. So I will say that one of the smartest things I did as a casual investor was just network with everybody. And I just said, hey, if you have a multifamily, and just to back up to your question, the reason I wanted a multifamily was because especially in Massachusetts, it's very hard to find a single family that's going to cash flow, but there are a lot of multi-family opportunities where you can force appreciation. And so I found a couple that were great, and one of them was an off-market deal. And I got that because somebody called me that I had met at a networking event. And I just tell everyone, like, hey, I'm looking for multifamilies. If you see one that's good in this range, let me know. And that's how I got one of them. And it was an amazing deal and pretty turnkey too. And it cash flowed right away. And it was great. So I don't know. I think that again, back to my like theme here about being sort of like a casual investor. I don't take real estate investing as seriously as a lot of other people that do it more full time or on a regular basis, but I've still found tons of success just by being intentional about a few things. One, education now that I learned a lot, and two, networking, right? And just getting to know what's out there and what's feasible. So, yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah, you don't have to, we were talking about this offline. You don't have to go into real estate full time to have success. I mean, I've done it, you've done it while working a full time job. I've been raising a family over here. And, we've been able to scale to, a portfolio over $5 million and full time job, family, church, community. Like, I'm still living my life and enjoying it. And you don't have to give up everything you can have your cake and eat it too. It's crazy.
Yes. And I also want to say too, like, I am a single woman. I have done all of these things on my own. You can also do it on your own. You can't do it totally on your own. You need to find good people to network with and a good place to get an education. And if you're interested in buying in an area, like make friends with real estate agents, find people that can help you. But there's so many people out there that want to help you if you want to get into investing, whether it's in the stock market or real estate. So you don't need somebody else to do it. You don't need anyone to give you permission to do it either. A lot of people are going to tell you like it's a bad idea or it's risky. Like I got that a lot, especially because I was a single person. I didn't have a backup plan. I didn't have family money to like fall back on. But I did enough of the financial foundations to understood that if this goes wrong, I'm going to be okay. And so you don't need a lot of money to get started. You don't necessarily need a partner to get started, but you do need to believe in yourself and you do need to network and educate and make friends. And anyone can do that. You can do that for $0. Networking costs $0. And it's one of the best tools out there to grow your wealth in real estate or the stock market.
You know who I found tell people that investing is the riskiest the most? It's broke people. That's the ones who are saying that real estate or stock investing is risky. They're broke.
Yes, 100%. Super broke. And a lot of people that, seem like they have a lot of money too, those people might also be broke. So I think one thing that is also really important too as you're going down this journey is you might look at other people, investors, and be like, wow, like they are so wealthy, they have so much money, like Instagram, social media, it's all a highlight reel, right? Like you don't know where they're really at. Like I guarantee my small portfolio and what I have in the stock market, I don't look super wealthy on the outside to a lot of people, but because I set up a good foundation and I learned the basics and I made smart choices over time, I'm in a good spot. And I've been smart with how I've used that money as well. Like I've used it to invest more. I didn't use it to buy Ferraris and mansions. I used it to create more wealth in different ways. And so I think that's important too. Like when you're considering like who you're taking advice from, just like do your due diligence and make sure they're the real deal. Because there's a lot of people out there that are doing a lot of stuff in the investing space. And I'm not sure how well they're using the money that they are getting, if they are.
Yep. That's genius. That's spot on. Yeah, I encourage everybody to challenge yourself to this because Tess and I both have seen what focus in this space and time can do. I encourage y'all to pick an asset. I would recommend real estate or real estate and stocks and go all in for 5 years after your finances are cleaned up. If you don't have your finances cleaned up, let's DM me, DM Tess. Let's get that worked out first. And then I want you to just for 5 years, invest every dime you can scrape up. And then I want you to turn around at 5 years and look back and you will say, wow, I'm wealthy.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. And that counts if you're starting with zero. Like if you have debt right now and you're listening to that and you're like, no way that can be me. Like it's going to take some sacrifices to get there. Like it's not necessarily easy, but it's simple. And I think that's really important too, is that not people think like there's an overnight way to do this. Like there's definitely not. Like it's work. And some of the decisions I made, like the way that I exponentially grew my wealth was, for me, the right choice was house hacking, because I knew that if I was going to live in a multifamily, I could save. And by the way, house hacking is when you live in a property and that has multiple units, you live in one and you rent out the others. I did that for 2 years and it changed my entire life. Is it where I wanted to live long-term forever? Absolutely not. But it was a fine place to live. I had everything I needed. And I knew that with my W-2 salary, my other investment properties, and my investments in the stock market, if I could buckle down for 2 years, I could make huge strides. And that changed my entire life. And this is only over the course of like a few years, all this happened. So I couldn't agree more. I think that even if you are sitting here in debt right now, it doesn't take a lifetime to become wealthy, but it does take intentional effort for a couple years. And it might take some sacrifices depending on where you are. Like if you're in debt, you might need to sell your car and get a shitty one. That might be one of the best ways to save money. Like you might need to make some hard choices. But then when you get to a place where you've made those hard choices and you've gotten yourself out of debt and you've started to invest, your investments and your efforts will compound just like the stock market. So I couldn't agree more. I think a lot of people think it's harder than it is. It's really just consistent effort over a couple years.
Short-term pain for long-term gain.
Yes. What is that quote that we were talking about on social media? It was like the discipline of, what was it? I love this quote, but Tony Robbins, it was like, nothing weighs as much as the regret of like inaction or something like that. I'll have to find it and put it in the show notes, but that's a great quote. And I do think that if you are like nervous or you don't think you can do both, like that's also a limiting belief. I think like you can pick one, like if you want to invest in the stock market, but I guarantee if you get into investing and you understand how it works, like you'll want to do more things. You'll want to expand into different opportunities because there's so much out there. Even businesses, I've invested in small businesses, and that has been really interesting and exciting as well. And something I want to do, like a small business that I believe in, that I can invest in and help get off the ground. That's when investing starts to get really fun too. And there's all these other ways to do it. There's so many ways to make money. I
love it. Well, Tess, thank you so much for being on the show today. Guys and gals, I can vouch for her personally. I know her. And, I've followed her for a long time. She's a fantastic person. So reach out to her. Tess, where's the best place that folks can get a hold of you at?
Sure. So the best place is on Instagram. At Wealth with Tess is my handle. And then I send out a lot of information over email as well. So always in the link in my Instagram profile, I have always some kind of free resource, whether it's a free financial independence checklist or a free beginning investing workshop that'll give you a lot of information in an hour. It's not an hour sales pitch. Like I'll actually give you some specific steps you can take to start investing in index funds. So both of those things are available all the time. And in my Instagram profile, that's probably the best place to find me.
Love it. Well, thank you again for being on. To you all listening, I would love for y'all to share this with a friend or two. Think of somebody in your network who this could help. I know that there's somebody this episode could help. So we would be super grateful if you'd share this. This is how the podcast gets out and how we're able to help others. And then why don't you take a screenshot of listening to this episode, whether you're watching on YouTube or Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever, take a screenshot and tag me at Finance Cowboy on Instagram and tag Tess at Wealth with Tess on Instagram. We would both love to tell you personally, thank you for taking time out of your day to listen to this. And if we can ever help with anything, don't hesitate to reach out. But Tess, again, thank you so much. And I can't wait to talk with you soon.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thanks for doing what you do. You make it so accessible. And I've learned so much watching your page as well. So it was awesome to talk to you. I appreciate it.
Talk to you soon. Thank you.